Today I'm pleased to welcome Thank you. Today I'm pleased to welcome you to our session on Black youth in policy, opportunities and barriers. As you know, Black people in Canada remain underrepresented in all areas of public policy sphere. Black youth especially can find it difficult to break into the policy space. This online panel event offers Black UBC students the opportunity to hear from Black policy professionals from across Canada and hear about their career journeys and their insights into realities of breaking into and working in public policy field as a Black professional. A talented panel of individuals will be diving into this topic in just one moment. However, before I introduce our moderator for the session, I would like to begin by acknowledging that I am joining this event today in the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam people. I am grateful to them for offering their lands for us to participate in this activity today. And I encourage you to do the same. Perhaps you can drop in the chat the Indigenous people that you pay homage to today. I would now like to introduce you to our moderator of this session, Naomi Hudson. Naomi is a third-year student in the Honors Political Science program. She has worked and volunteered in the policy, education, and diversity, equity, and inclusion spaces, including at Operation Black Vote Canada, where she was an 1834 Fellow and a program coordinator for the 1834 Global Fellowship. Currently, Naomi is working as a research assistant with the ORIS, working on the first-year experiential education project. Outside of work and school, Naomi enjoys reading, playing piano, and traveling. Thank you for not only joining us today, Naomi, but for organizing this session today. And now I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Nelly, for that introduction. I'm really excited to be with all of you here today. And before I get started, I would also like to acknowledge that I'm joining from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam and Tsawwassen First Nation. So we don't have a ton of time for our panel today, so I'd like to jump right into this topic. For our audience, please know that I'm going to ask our panelists a couple of questions, and then I'll open it up to the audience for your questions. We invite respectful and engaging participation in this session. And if anyone has any concerns throughout the panel event, please feel free to message Christina Fung or Tamara Baldwin, who have tech after their names, and they can help you with any issues that you might have. And once we get to the Q&A portion, you can either put your hand up to ask a question yourself, or you can just pop it into the chat, and then I can ask the panelists directly. So now I'll introduce our panelists to you. We are greatly honored to be joined by Velma Morgan, Iyanu Soyege, and Dr. Rashid Sumalia. I'm going to provide a few lines of each of these persons' amazing bios. So Velma Morgan is an educator and the chair of Operation Black Vote Canada. In her capacity as chair of Operation Black Vote Canada, she co-created the 1834 Fellowship, which has helped dozens of Black Canadian youth launch careers in the public policy space. Dr. Rashid Sumalia is a professor and Canada Research Chair in interdisciplinary ocean and fisheries economics at the Institute for Oceans and Fisheries, and at the School of Public Policy and Global Affairs at UBC. His research includes bioeconomics, marine ecosystem valuation, and the analysis of global issues such as fisheries subsidies, IUU, or illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and the economics of high and deep sea fisheries. And Iyanu Soyege works at the Government of Alberta as a policy analyst, supporting Alberta's small businesses and medium enterprises. Iyanu is a graduate of McGill University with a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and African Studies. So welcome to all of you. And I will get started underway with the first question. So we'll begin with Velma, and then to Dr. Rashid and to here to talk about the barriers and opportunities for Black youth in policy, and we'll have up to 5 minutes for each of you. And I was wondering if you could give like a quick background of yourself, a quick introduction of yourself, a synopsis of your background and your career journey, and just like your general experience navigating the policy space as Black professionals. So Velma, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Naomi. I am extremely happy to be here, and even more happier to be here with Naomi and Iyanu. And I think throughout our conversation, you'll find out why. I trying to figure out how my career started. So I was been involved in politics since I was 15 years old. When I was in my science, I think it was my grade 9 science teacher who asked us to volunteer to work on an election campaign. And that was the first time I've ever worked on an election campaign. And after that day, the person who I campaigned for actually won. It was a new experience for me. I've never been on an election campaign, especially on E-Day. And I thought to myself, why have I never had this experience before? Why is it no one has ever told me about working on election campaigns? Since then, I've worked on almost every election campaign since I was 15 years old, in some capacity. And with my work on election campaigns, I've worked on several that's winning campaigns. And in those winning campaigns, I've been asked to come and work for them at Queen's Park. So I've worked at Queen's Park for 4 different MPs in 5 different ministries. And my career started out as I was a legislative assistant, and I worked my way up to my last role in government was director of policy for on the political side for training for tourism, culture, and sports in the province of Ontario. And I can say that most of my my work in policy was because of my volunteer work on political campaigns, and the person won and then asked me to come and join their campaigns. And what I have to say is that, you know, I ended my political career as a staffer, as a director of policy, but it didn't start out that way. As I said, I started as a legislative assistant. I've been the MPP liaison. I've been a special assistant. I've done almost all the different jobs to lead up to being a director of policy. Now, that doesn't work out for a lot of people. Some people just go right into being, you know, senior policy advisor or senior policy advisor. But for me, I had to work my way up to that point. To being a policy advisor. And now I think with the we have a program called the 1834 Fellowship, which is for young people 18 to 25 who are interested in policy. And the reason why we created that program is simply because there's not enough Black policy advisors at any level of government or in any position of policy, whether it's in corporations or in organizations. So we decided to create this pathway to increase the number of Black policy advisors, simply because when I was younger, I didn't know this job existed. It was because of my volunteer work that people introduced me to this particular these particular jobs. I knew I could be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher or an accountant, but working as a policy advisor in government wasn't something that I was aware of at a very young age. And we are trying to change that to ensure that we have more Black policy advisors. We have more young Black people understanding that this is also a career option.
Thank you so much, Velma. I'll pass it on to Dr. Rashid.
Yeah, that was really cool, Velma. Nice to see how you made it, right? Starting and working your way. And I think that is a very important thing for young people, Black youth, to really see somebody do that, right? Because sometimes it takes time, almost all the time, actually, it takes time to work your way and learn things and build yourself. So that is nice. My story is a little bit different. I never organized a campaign. Okay, well, right. Essentially, I've been in the academic field all my life, starting off from West Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, you know, and actually I wasn't supposed to be doing what I'm doing. I went to university in Ahmadu Bello University in Zaria, in an engineering department. So I should be going around building houses now. and I did my year of national service, which was in a building consultancy, and I quickly got bored with the drawings. It just wasn't for me. And at the time, there was a famous Nigerian, actually, Adebayo Adedeji. He was heading the Economic Commission for Africa, based in Ethiopia, as part of the United Nations system. And he was so influential. Almost every week, you hear him talking about what the continent needs to do to build itself and so on. And I just decided, I said, I want to do something like this, actually. So you see, starting from an engineer. So where you start shouldn't necessarily determine how you progress or where you end up. It's just the beginning, and you can always do something as you move up. So I decided to do economics, because I wanted to be more public facing. And then I took off to Norway, of all places, to do my graduate studies. And it was in Norway that I moved into economics, worked my way very quickly. It's good to have a technical background. If you want to do economics, do maths or engineering first. So I just zoomed through the thing and did my PhD. And in the last year, I came to UBC as a visiting scholar. So after my year, I was going back, and colleagues here said, oh my gosh, we love what you do. It's crazy. We want you here. I said, oh, Canada, UBC, this very interesting place. Here I come. So I went back. I don't want to tell you the year. This was in 96, because some students tell me when I say 96, they say I wasn't born then. So I'm kind of careful now, right? So then I went and defended and came back, and it has been here all along. So, and so that economics actually opened doors in terms of policy. And I was always interested in making sure that my research actually impacts life on the ground, because, we have so many problems. You can't just publish your paper and go to sleep. Not for me. I wanted to have impact. So that pushed me. That's why I'm in the policy school, for example, and I'm at the Institute of Oceans and Fisheries, where it's interdisciplinary. We all have to bring our heads together, right, to solve our big problems. So then I started doing this, and the ocean is everywhere, right? You have the ocean, parts of the world all over, and that means I travel a lot to all continents, talking with people, policymakers. I've had the opportunity to talk about the ocean in the White House, US Senate, Canadian Parliament, African Union, European. It's just unbelievable. That little African boy, right? So I'm telling you this to know that there is nothing to stop you if you're determined. And I can see it. Naomi writes me, and I look at what she has done in undergraduate program. Man, you've already done more than many graduates. See, you can do amazing stuff. So just keep going, be determined, look to your work and push on. Don't let all these obstacles just stand in your way. You have to decide. You have lots of people who are I don't want to use not so good words, but some people are just nasty, right? Get away from them and seek out. For every nasty person, you'll find 5 more people who are really there to support and help you. Deal with those people, and I tell you, you're going to rise and do very well. We'll have more time for me to open up more on the issues I've raised and more, but I think I should shut up now and let my sister come on again. Over to you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Rashid. And finally, I'll pass it on to Iyanu.
Thank you, Naomi. So to answer this question, it's important for me to describe who I am as a person. So I was born in a Southern African country called Swaziland. It's now called Eswatini. And I am Nigerian by blood. Both my parents are Nigerian, and I am Canadian by residence and citizenship. I've lived in Canada most of my life, but I've also lived in South Africa as well. So the reason why I shed a light on who I am, where I've lived, is because I've I've had the opportunity to see different places in the world. And when I've seen those different places in the world, I've realized that they're all organized differently, and the services, the public services and goods that are available differ between different regions. So observing this, I wanted to get into a field that would give me the opportunity to address the disparities that exist. So I thought about politics as a potential venture I could seek. So I went into McGill University. I studied political science and African studies. I was able to explore the deep roots of why I was able to see the differences in different countries when it came to what their governments were providing their citizens with. And as I was going through my education, most of my education was focused on politics and not necessarily policy. But in my last year of university, I had the opportunity to participate in Operation Black Vote Canada's 1834 Fellowship. And as mentioned before, Velma is the chair of the Operation Black Vote Canada organization. And while I was a participant in that program, I got the opportunity to learn the difference between public policy and politics. And I realized that this is something I would be more interested in because the type of personality I have, and also just the type of lifestyle I want to have, I didn't necessarily want to be involved in a field where I would be constantly arguing, and a lot of the arguments would be based on partisanship as opposed to the key issues themselves. And participating in the program gave me the opportunity to see that policy is a field that would give me the opportunity to actually engage those issues that actually matter. So after having participated in that program, I applied to a number of different public policy related jobs, and I was very fortunate to get a job, an entry-level job at the government of Alberta as a research and policy analyst in the Treasury Board and Finance Ministry. And eventually I transferred into the ministry I'm in now, which is the Jobs, Economy and Northern Development Ministry, where I work on supporting small businesses and medium enterprises. And just to touch on some other things that have been very helpful in getting to where I'm at today, I was quite involved in extracurriculars while I was at McGill University. I was the vice president of political affairs for an organization called the Black Students Network. And that's actually an organization that did give me the opportunity to contribute to public policy as a student as well, because in my last year of university, I got the opportunity to write a policy brief addressed to the city of Montreal to inform how they could potentially diversify their spending to support more social initiatives, especially those that benefit racialized groups in the city. Additionally, I was a coordinator for a program called Women in House. And I suggest, I don't know which schools you are all coming from, but I know UBC has that program. But I suggest if you're interested in politics, policy, and you're a woman, please get involved in that program, because it's one that gave me exposure to different politicians in Canada, particularly those who work as members of parliament and senators in Ottawa. And yeah, those were just some of the experiences that gave me more knowledge on the differences between policy and politics, and it gave me the exposure I needed to pursue public policy with confidence. And that's all I have to say for now. So yeah, I look forward to answering the other questions.
Thank you so much, Iyanu. And once again, thank you to everybody for answering this question about your journey and your background so far. So the next question that I have is, in your experience, what are some of the barriers that you might have faced in establishing your career? And what are some of the barriers that you see facing Black youth today who are seeking to enter the policy space? So we'll go in the same order again. So Velma, I'll pass this one on to you first.
Barriers. So I think one of the major barriers that I had early on was that I looked very young. So it was kind of hard for people to take advice from me because like, well, you don't have enough lived experience, or how do you know about this issue? So one of the issues is that I looked young. I may have not been that young, but I still looked young. So it's getting over that barrier. And I think for that, I just decided that I was just going to ignore that. And I was just going to do my job, which was to advise. And it was up to them to take my advice or not take my advice. But in doing so, I made sure that I was extremely, actually over-prepared in advising. So I knew the topic back and forth. They could ask me any questions, just to show them that, you know, my appearance wasn't something that was going to hinder me from giving the best advice possible. But I was also extremely fortunate to have a lot of very strong advocates, a lot of mentors that opened doors for me and vouched for me. So I can't tell you about a lot of barriers that I faced simply because I had these champions who were there to speak on my behalf and ensure that I was able to enter these doors. Without these champions, I could tell you that I wouldn't even know where the door started or ended. So I wouldn't even know how to get in, but I was lucky enough to have people who helped me along the way. But I think, you know, so that's one thing I would try to tell young people is to try to get a mentor or try to get a champion or somebody who's already in the field, because they can help open doors for you. For youth now, I think the same thing in terms of not knowing where to enter is a major barrier. For a lot of youth, they don't even know that public policy or a policy advisor is actually a career, that you could actually enter this career. You know, a lot of people are still only trying to enter into the traditional careers, doctors, lawyers, teachers, and not realizing that you could help inform our society is run. You could help inform policies of health, policies of education. And I think that's one thing that we want to do is get more young people involved. But I think, you know, in entering, I think having a network to help you, because a lot of policy jobs, a lot of policy opportunities are not advertised widely. It's usually who you know and word of mouth. So being able to getting information is a barrier. So try to widen your network. I know it's really great to hang out with people who look like you, who sound like you, have the same experience as you, but they're not going to be able to give you opportunities outside of yourself, right? So try to widen your network with different types of people in different types of fields. So you're not closed out on any opportunity that might be of interest to you in the future. And, you know, first, like Iyanu, she came into the program thinking she wanted to get into politics and realizing that no, policy is where she wanted to be. So that's a great example of how when you widen your network, you also widen your opportunities.
Thank you very much, Velma, and I'll pass it on to Dr. Rashid.
Yeah, Velma, thank you. That's great. Some of the things I'm going to say will overlap with what you have said naturally. In terms of barriers, what I have really seen and faced a lot as a Black person is this low expectation. You know, you appear in a space and it's almost like you see it on their faces. It's like, what are you also doing here, right? So there's that low expectation. I had a trip with my team to Malawi years ago. We're doing a study, and then we go. And so this thing I told you, it's not only about Canada, even in Africa, right? So I go with my Norwegian colleagues, and I'm the senior person in the team, leading them. Then we go out in town, and everybody is going after my white colleagues and the kids. The kids and asking for money, and me, nobody comes to me, right? Nobody comes to me, and so my students looked up and they said, "Rashid, this is not fair. You are our leader. You earn more than us, and nobody comes to you." I said, "But that's a picture the world has given to Black people, right? I'm poor just because I'm Black, right?" So that low expectation, even on campus here now, I'm walking on the street, somebody, a visitor is looking for a place, then they stop me and say, hi, are you a student here? It's always, are you a student? One day I go frustrated. I say, come on, can't you see my bald head? I mean, can't you see? You're always a student when you are on UBC campus, so low expectation. But the thing that really helped me, I don't know how many of the young people listening have heard James Brown. James Brown actually was one of those who liberated me as a little African boy, 8 or 9 or 10 years. I heard his music. Say it loud, I'm black and proud. And that actually lifted everything from me and gave me a lot of confidence and energy. Look, I think he set me up to take on the world in some field. So if you haven't heard James Brown's Black and Proud, go read it. Go listen to it, because you need something in you that helps you to keep to the center no matter what is happening around you. And to me, that was one of the things, right? So that is something I thought I should share. Now, in terms of how to prepare yourself, yeah, go listen to James Brown and others like him. But I think, Velma, you touched on 3 aspects in your intervention. I just want to echo you in some way. Number one, what I get from you is that just know what you're doing. Learn hard, study hard, know your stuff. Know your stuff. Because Velma was looking young, she's a woman, she's black. That's 3 of them, intersectionality, right? So this low expectation is even more on her than me, for example, because I have 1 or 2 of the characteristics. So know your stuff. That is, once you know that helps you a lot. So like I said, I go to a conference. There was one we did in Singapore. Just UBC sent me, actually, Canada in Asia conference. And I was on a panel, and I go into the room and everybody's going after all the others who are not black, right? And I'm there, I'm just sitting smiling, you know. And then we get to the stage. Oh my gosh. I got to the stage because of that low expectation. You start talking and the whole room is, who is this guy? That kind of thing. So the low expectation can also be advantageous, right? Just use it well if you know your stuff. The second thing you talked about was networking, which is crucial, right? Crucial. And then number 3, I think you touch on that also. You have to sell yourself. You can be the best person in what you do. If nobody knows about you, it doesn't mean anything, right? So that's why you see people on social media, on TikTok. If you use it well, it gives you the platform, networking, going to conferences. And what I tell my own son, I tell him, if you really want to work in a company or in a place, just write an email to somebody there. You'll be surprised how many people will respond. And you should be ready for no's, right? So many will say no, but you just need 1 yes, right? So all these things are things that will help you. Now, I've talked about knowing your stuff, networking, and selling yourself. There was a study that actually looked at what weight you put on this in terms of your success as a career person. 10% only is knowing your stuff. It's fundamental, but once you know it, it's just 10%. And selling yourself is 20%. Networking is 70%. So this is really important. Go out, meet people, right? Don't worry. So people say, no, okay, pack them up, move on to the next. And I tell you, you're gonna go far, all right? I'll stop here again and we keep going. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rashid. Iyanu, I'll pass it to you to wrap it up.
Yeah, so to answer the first part of that question, when it comes to some of the barriers I've faced in establishing my career, it really stems back to what Velma and Professor Sumalia had touched on, intersectionality, and how different factors of my identity have worked together to influence how people navigate me and also how I navigate them as well. So I'm a Black woman. I am also young, and that surprises a lot of people, like when they see me in my office building. It's a secure area. There are even times that I've like left my card upstairs, like my access card upstairs, and then I ask security to let me in, and they make a big fuss about it. They even tell me, where's your ID? Show me your government email as proof as some type of proof that I actually work there. Meanwhile, my white counterparts, they are able to get back upstairs without providing any proof. They just have to say, I work there. Yeah, I've also had like some individuals who work in the same building as me ask why I'm attending like certain events at work, because they're under the assumption that somebody who looks like me cannot be working there. And I've also had some colleagues take credit for my work, and management give credit to others for work I've done. And fortunately, these are issues I've been able to overcome. And one of the big things I've been able to do is to just encourage myself to be confident. There's no need for you to downplay your accomplishments, especially if you're a young Black person. People are already going to do that for you. You don't need to do that yourself. And I also sought out different resources. So I'm a big reader, and I love reading memoirs. I love reading books about people who are in places I want to get to, or even if they're not in fields that I'm in, but they've been able to achieve a considerable amount of things. I like to learn from them and just understand how they think. So a book I would recommend for young Black women especially is called The Memo by Minda Harts. And that's a book. The subtitle is like Helping Women of Color Secure a Seat at the Table. So if you are someone who wants to get into policy as a field and you're seeing this as a great height, something that is hard to break into, I suggest you read that book, because Minda Harts is an author. She does provide useful strategies to enter spaces that you wouldn't ordinarily think you can enter. And she encourages us, yes, that is the book. She encourages us to pursue our goals with confidence. And another thing I've been able to do is acknowledge that my difference is my strength. There is a reason why I was selected and I was hired for the job I'm currently in. It's because I bring a different perspective with the background I have. And those of us who are bringing diverse perspectives, we're actually able to be quite good policy makers, because we're able to consider different circumstances, different people, and how the policies we are working on affect different people in different ways. And when it comes to what barriers are facing Black youth more generally, especially those who are seeking to enter the policy space, I would say a big thing is lack of knowledge on how government application systems work. So I get messages on LinkedIn every week from different folks asking me to review their resumes or to give them tips. And I share tips with them, and I'm over here thinking, oh, these are just like simple things. And when they message me thanking me, they're saying that they never knew about these things. So when you apply to a lot of government jobs, you will be one of like, a lot of these jobs, hundreds of people are applying. So it's not possible for a recruiter or for someone who's hiring for the position to read every single application. So what they do is they have computer systems that filter out applications. So it's very important that you know how to structure your resume, your cover letter, and your answers to application questions to make sure that your application will actually be read by a human and not filtered out by the computer. So that's something I just wanted to mention. And I hope that later on I would get an opportunity to expand on that further, or if that is something you are more interested in and it's not touched on in this conversation, it's something you can message me about on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much, Iyanu. So I have many more questions for all of you, but I suspect that the audience may also have questions. So I'd like to invite any of our audience members to raise your hand to ask a question. Or you can also pose your question in the chat and we'll try to get it included. And if you have a specific person that you would like to ask your specific question, then please indicate that as well. So we already have a question in the chat from Selma asking, and they say, hi, I'm interested in joining Operation Black Vote Canada. How can I do that? So maybe I'll pass this on to Velma.
Hi, Selma. I occasionally get called Selma because my name is Velma. People mix that up all the time. So in order to join Operation Black Vote Canada, you could go onto our website at obvc.ca and you could get on to our newsletter. You could also follow us on all our social media at Black Vote Canada. And it depends on the capacity that you want to join. Do you want to join as a volunteer? Do you want to join on the board? Do you want to join on helping to organize, be on one of the organizing committees? So there's lots of different opportunities and how you could be involved with Operation Black Vote Canada. But if you join our social media, you get to know all the things that we're doing and information. If you go onto our website, you could actually put in a volunteer application.
Thank you so much. So the next question we have in the chat is from, what advice would you give to your younger self? Just trying to start off in the field. So maybe I'll start with Dr. Rashid, if you'd like to answer this question, and then we'll go Iyanu and then Velma.
Yeah, so the question, can you kindly repeat the question, please?
So the question is, what advice would you give to your younger self, looking back at your journey so far? If there was any piece of advice that you think you could give to yourself at the beginning of your journey, what would that be?
Yeah, is to persevere, is to just hang in there, and that I should expect that sometimes I'll be sad, Sometimes you don't get what you want, but once you keep on, you're gonna make it. So hang in there, just keep going. That would be the thing, because I realize that has been a really powerful reason for many of the things I've been able to do, right? So don't get distracted. Keep your eyes on the ball, right? And they'll just float around you and leave you alone, okay? So yeah, that's the advice I would give my younger self.
Thank you so much. And I'll pass it on to Iyanu.
Yeah, I would say advice I would give to my younger self, focus on content and not just credentials. So as someone who is a first-generation immigrant, I have Nigerian parents who are very passionate about education. Of course, I am as well. But in Nigerian culture, there's this fascination with being a lawyer, being a doctor, being an engineer or an accountant, or even like being a politician. And it's kind of funny to say this, but what I noticed is that sometimes those who don't have those titles as part of their job titles are those who are very underrated when it comes to what they know. There are individuals who are focused on educating themselves. They read a lot. They associate themselves with diverse groups of people, and through that, they are able to become wiser and more knowledgeable. And their knowledge depth is very vast. And that's not something that automatically comes with having a credential. Of course, having certain credentials is a key part in helping one get access to certain types of knowledge that are very important in a particular field. And it's also something that can give somebody the ability to think more critically. But at the same time, don't focus too much on that. There are other ways to become a more knowledgeable individual, and seek out those sources where you can gather that knowledge to become someone that understands the world better and is able to work through the world better with the increased knowledge you have.
Thank you so much, Iyanu. And Velma, before we move on to you, I can see Dr. Rashid has his hand up. So I don't know if you wanted to add something to the conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to quickly follow her because what she says actually is so true, right? This credential business. In Nigeria, you find somebody write their name and they say I'm a pharmacist, engineer, PhD, masters, and all that, right? So it's really good. But the thing is, I was a bit lucky, so I thought I should say that. My dad was really, when I finished my A-levels, I go to him and say, see, I have the grace, I can do anything from medicine to engineering. Is there anything you would be happy if I did? Yeah, a nice son, huh? So I said, and the old man had a big laugh. He said, come on, go do whatever you love to do and what you are passionate about. Even if it is cleaning gutter, he said, and you are the best gutter cleaner, people will look for you. That's my dad, you know. So that I was like, and that is what allowed me to choose to do Ocean and Fisheries economics. My colleagues were thought I was a fool to do that. You can do finance, banking, investment, oil and gas, big money. I want or medicine. In fact, these days, when I talk with some of my colleagues, you know what they ask me? Who thought fish could take you this far? You know, especially when I got the chance to talk on the same day, the same space with President Obama. Can you imagine, my dear people? In 2016, the last year of Obama's presidency, there was an ocean conference in the State Department organized by Secretary John Kerry. I get an email. John Kerry wants you to speak at this. It's unbelievable. So I go there on the first day. The first speaker was John Kerry. He finished his talk and introduced President Obama. So it's like I'm sitting at the end of the table and Obama is standing there talking and we're smiling at each other, right? He finished, and the third person to talk was Leonardo DiCaprio. And I tell you, number 4 is your little Rashid. I was the 4th speaker that day. That was my highlight, frankly speaking. And so you are right on, Iyanu, because this kind of obsession with titles can really slow us down as a people. Go learn what you're passionate in, and I tell you, even the sky will not be a limit, okay? Thank you for allowing me to do that, yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Rashid. And Velma, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you. This question was from Jalila, who was a 1834 Global Fellow. So we have them all here. I would actually tell my younger self a whole lot of things. The first thing would be, this too shall pass, meaning the good and the bad. So celebrating the good and just don't wallow in it, and you know, sit with the bad and don't wallow in it, because it's going to pass and there's going to be, you know, a new day at some point. So don't sweat the small stuff. Like there's going to be things that's going to try to distract you and derail you from your goal. Just keep on going and just don't get distracted. Read a lot. I mean, I read everything, newspapers, magazines, things that I'm not interested in, I read. And I found that it's come in handy at networking events or just meeting new people. I could just start talking about things and like, how would you know that? Because I read it, right? It's not that I'm interested in it, I just read it and it just comes in handy. I would say that your volunteer work is just as important as your paid job, and sometimes more important. I can tell you that my volunteer work has gotten me more opportunities than my actual paid work. So don't underestimate your volunteer work and the people who you meet in your volunteer work, especially being on different types of boards, whether they're corporate boards or volunteer boards, because on boards, you usually have people who will come from different career backgrounds. And that's, again, widening your network, getting in contact with other types of people who are not in your niche job. So volunteering, being on boards, and also remember that you're going to meet the same people again, right? Some people like to burn down the house when they're leaving a company or an organization. Chances are you're going to see that person again somewhere along in life. So try to leave every relationship, even the bad relationships, amicably, you know, because you might meet that person again where that person might be able to help further your career or advance you in some shape or way. So again, you're going to meet the same people again over and over again. And the last thing, you know, I would say is like make decisions that that you can live with, that's morally okay with you. And don't make decisions because other people are making those decisions, because at the end of the day, they're not living with those decisions the way that you're going to be living with those decisions. And those are the things I would tell my my younger self, because those are the things I had to learn along the way.
Thank you so much for that, Velma. I don't see any more audience questions at the moment. Oh, there is another question that came in directed at Iyanu. So the question is from Selma, and they say, Iyanu, what is the most difficult part of your job as a policy analyst?
That's a good question. So it's kind of hard for me to answer that, like, in terms of what I do currently, but I can tell you what was the most difficult part for me to get adjusted to when I first joined the field. So when you're a student, you're focused on writing papers that are really long. By the time I was done with university, I was writing papers that were ranging from 20 pages to 25 pages on average. But in the policy world, you're lucky if you get to write up to 4 pages. Oftentimes, your assistant deputy ministers would want you to write a document that is 2 pages max. So that's something I struggled with, because I can be a long-winded writer. I can just write and write, think and think, put all my analysis down on my sheets. But that only worked in the educational context. It doesn't work in the policy world, where things move very quickly and so many things need to get done. And upper management, they just don't have the time to be reading a lot of documents. So yeah, that was the most difficult thing I had to get adjusted to. And I would highly recommend that if you are someone who's a student right now looking to get into policy, start practicing how to condense your writing. It will be very helpful when you enter the field.
Thank you so much. I definitely agree with that. And that was something that I definitely had to get used to when I was writing policy briefs during my time with the 1834 fellowship, because it's just so different from like academic writing. So that was definitely something that I had to get used to, is learning how to condense my typically verbose style of writing. So seeing no more audience questions, I think we can wrap it up by asking this last question, just sort of reflecting on the future of the policy space. So the question that I have is, how do you see the policy space evolving in the next 5, 10, or even 15 years? And what do you think those could be the implications of those changes for Black policymakers? So Velma, I'll start with you on this.
Okay, I may have to come back, because every time the other two speaks, I get these other ideas in my head. So first, I think, because we're at a place where our voices and opinions are heard anytime through social media, you could tag an elected official or president of an organization. I think the role of policy is really going to come from citizens themselves, and not by selected governments or companies consulting certain people. Because right now, you have a stakeholder person, you bring in people who you want to consult. I think, next 5 to 10 years, because of social media, because as a citizen, I could just say whatever I want. I could organize a group of people to also say the same thing that I want to say, that's going to actually inform public policy. We have a former fellow, Ebenezer, who is also the coordinator of 1834. He always says to me, Velma, the streets are talking, the streets are talking. And I think that policymaking will be more transparent, and we'll have more input from people on the streets. So my hope is that, that we'll have more policymakers that are Black, so that they'll be able to bring their lived experiences to these policies, but also interpret and shepherd what is being said on the streets by our community to create great policy for everybody.
Thank you so much, Velma. Dr. Rashid, I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, so that's great. So what I think I'll start by saying that when I stand now and look back, and then I look in the future, I think actually they're going to be more prosperous for Black people in North America, at least. And I think that's also what Velma was talking about, whether it's the social media opening spaces, or actually you have more Black people really doing this and getting on stages, opening doors. You have vice president who is a Black woman, you know, all those things. If you look at the US in particular, with all that is going on, if you see the spaces African Americans have opened and what they're doing and contributing to that society is just amazing. And I think ultimately all of these things is going to help open doors for Black youth. And so you know what I want to leave you with? I think the future is bright for Black people in North America and therefore in the world, actually, because we're all connected, right? And the continent also. We always have to reflect back to the continent, as I always say, because until Africa shines, we can really never truly shine. So the connection to the continent, which is something I do a lot. I mean, I go every year. I have university connections. I have students coming here and going. So yeah, I think the future is bright. Let's keep working hard and putting our best, and I think we will be fine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rashid, and I'll pass it on to Iyanu to wrap us up.
Yeah, I see the policy space evolving in a way that there will be more emphasis on substantive representation instead of descriptive representation. So for those of us who don't know what that may mean, substantive representation is when there are individuals who are occupying important positions of leadership and they are actually doing something with the opportunities they are being given, as opposed to descriptive representation, where someone is in a particular space and they are celebrated just because maybe they're a Black person who's in that space, and not many Black people are given the opportunity to be in those spaces. And the reason why I see there being a potential shift towards substantive representation, because what I'm seeing with our generation is that there's less tolerance for things like virtue signaling. It's not enough to say, I'm a Black person in this position and I represent all of you. As Black people, we are not a monolith. We come from many different backgrounds. We have different experiences that will shape how we perceive the world and how we address it. And it's not going to be enough to have representation for representation's sake. It's not going to be enough to have Black spaces and white spaces. You need to do something with that position once you are there. And we have been seeing examples of this. We're seeing how one of the highest offices in the United States, Black person is there, and people are open, like their eyes are open to what her policies were like. Also with how the municipal leadership in Chicago and New York were perceived. It's not just enough to be a Black person in these spaces. It's important to do something with that opportunity you were given. Of course, that's important regardless of whatever race or ethnic background you are from. But yeah, it's just important that if you are given a unique opportunity, that you realize how much of a privilege it is, and it's something that you will use as an opportunity to benefit others and not just yourself.
Thank you so much, Iyanu, and I think Velma had something that she wanted to add as well.
Yes, I agree with everything that Iyanu said. I think she's right. This generation isn't going to accept not being included and being excluded. The 1834 fellowship, we have 60 alumni. Most of them are going into public policy or in public policy. And that's the one reason why we created this fellowship, was to fill the gap of public policy makers. And they're going in knowing that, you know, they're not only there, they're not going in as a person that's representing the Black community. Yes, they're going to ensure that policies don't adversely affect the Black community, but they're going in there because they're smart, and they have really good ideas that's going to benefit our society as a whole. And I think that's important to say, that they're not going in as a Black policymaker, they're going in there as a policymaker who just happens to be Black.
Yes, 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 yes. Go there, do your best, shine like crazy, you know, that's the point. I mean, yeah, thanks.
Thank you all very much. So that brings us to the conclusion of the Black Youth in Policy event. Thank you so much to all of our panelists and to you, the audience, for taking the time to have this very, very important conversation. And we hope that this sparks more opportunities for us to gather and collaborate and support one another as Black people in the policy space or seeking to enter the policy space. I see that Velma has dropped in the chat some ways to connect with Operation Black Vote Canada. And so please feel free to reach out to them via those methods if you're interested in the work that they do, and I would highly recommend it myself. Lastly,
yeah, sorry, finish up. I just wanted to finish up.
Okay. So lastly, we'd also like to encourage you to follow the UBC Human Rights Collective on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter for more information about future events. Our next event is in person at the UBC Vancouver campus on next Monday, April 3rd. And it too is as a youth topic panel. And this panel will feature young leaders within UBC who are approaching human rights challenges in their communities in unique ways. So please check out our webpage or social media for more information. Once again, thank you so much to Velma, Rashid, and Iyanu, and I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
And thanks to our moderator. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.